Live with CDP Sports Talk, a weekly sports and entertainment podcast sponsored by Barry Cullen Chevrolet. Live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and LinkedIn. And on audio via Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Spotify, Anchor FM, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Radio Public, and TuneIn. Now, here's your host, Chris Palme.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Season 6, Episode 44, overall 319th episode of Live with CDP Sports Talk, sponsored by Barry Cullen Chevrolet Dealership at 905 Woodlawn Road West in the Guelph Auto Mall. Check out barrycullen.com for the newest selection of new and pre-owned GM vehicles, or give them a call at 519-824-0210 or email them at info@barrycullen.com. Live with CDP Sports Talk is now on Roku TV on demand. Shout out to Linda McGrath for arranging that. Thank you so much. And Live with CDP Sports Talk is on weeknights from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern on WQEE 99.1 FM, The Key, the home of Southern talk and sports. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you so much for tuning in to Live with CDP Sports Talk on this, hard to believe it's already Tuesday, September 26th, 2023. Where did September go? It just seems like we're not far from October as of, I believe this Sunday is October 1st. But I look forward to my guest today. My guest's name is Lisa Cole. This is her first time on my show, and I met her through LinkedIn. She's the executive director of Turning Pages, a nonprofit group in Columbia, South Carolina. And she's also the principal consultant of Strategy, I believe if I got that right, Navigator. And she's also a marketer and an author of 4 books out of Columbia, South Carolina. So I'm going to bring on my guest, Lisa Cole. Good afternoon, Lisa. How you doing?
Hey, Chris. Thanks for having me on today.
Well, thank you so much, and it's been a pleasure meeting you through LinkedIn and being able to connect with you to come on today and just talk about your work with nonprofit organizations over the year. And you've done quite a lot of things: freelance writer, web developer as well. And also, I looked in on your profile too. You had a group called the Collie Dog Owners Group. I guess you did that for 10 years.
Yes, that was a long time. I've always been entrepreneurial. So my very first company I ever started was when I was about 4 years old. I started a paper airplane business, and I suckered my uncle into it. I made paper airplanes, and I said, if you sell this for me for 25 cents each, I will give you a nickel out of that. And God bless him. He's then passed away now, but I loved him so much. He was all on board. He encouraged that, and he took the airplanes that I made, and he went out and he said he sold them, and he would give me the money for his sales, and I was super excited. So I've been starting businesses since I was super young. Collie dog owners came about when I was about 18 or 19. It was right at the turn of the century, and I got 2 new collies. And I went looking online trying to find information about how to be the best collie dog owner out there. And at that time, there was not really anything out there for collie dog owners. So I purchased the domain, colliedogowners.com. Started my own website and my own MSN back in the day when there was MSN groups. So that was the big thing before social media came along. I started an MSN group called Collie Dog Owners, and it grew really fast. It's probably one of the hardest things I ever do, managing a forum, because especially with dog owners, they can get super testy sometimes. But that evolved into the Collie Shop, where I did artwork, sold on Cafe Press. So if you were around in the early 2000s, you would have heard of the drop shipper Cafe Press. Sold collie dog products through them. And I spent about a decade or so doing that. I absolutely loved that. It was super fun. Made some easy money through that, residual sales from the Cafe Press sales. I met a lot of wonderful people. And then around 2012, I had grown up from the teenager I was into a family. I had started having a family. And my third kid came along, and I slipped into a postpartum depression, forgot about my domains, my collie dog owners for a couple of months, didn't pay attention to the renewals on it, and I lost my domain. And I lost everything to do. It's one of the most heartbreaking web experiences I've ever had. I lost 10 years worth of work, lost my domain I'd had for 10 years. And only the people who are who are in web stuff can understand that feeling of like, I just lost everything. So anyway, that was to make a short story long.
Are you originally from South Carolina?
Yes, born, bred, and raised right in Columbia, South Carolina. I have lived in the Midlands my entire life. My father and my mother, both before me, lived in the Midlands their entire lives. They were both born in the 1940s. And their parents before them were right here from the Midlands. So yeah, our roots run deep right here in Columbia.
I've never been there yet. I've been to 13 states, but I think South Carolina is definitely one state. And also, I met somebody. I was covering the Buffalo Bills in July. His name is Alex, and he's from your part of the state as well. He's a huge Bills fan. It seems like there's a lot of Buffalo Bills fans in North and South Carolina.
It's because I think everybody from New York just migrates down here to get away from all the snow, and they bring their love of Buffalo Bills down here. So I'm married to an upstate New Yorker that that grew up just below the border of Canada in a little town called Kendall. So he's from Kendall, New York. He found his way down here in his late teens, early 20s. We ended up meeting, and he stayed here with me. But he brought his love of the Bills down here, and it seems like every time we go out, he sees someone with a Bills hat, with a Bills shirt, and that they're instant buddies. And they stand there in the store or the grocery store or wherever we are talking about the Bills.
They have such a huge fan following. And you know what? You can leave Buffalo and Western New York, but you can't take the Bills out of your blood. And it's just amazing how many people I've met over the years from other states that come down to Orchard Park, New York for Bills games or even a practice. They had 50,000 people for a scrimmage game in August there. And it was just amazing just to see that many people turn out there. And I got to see their new site of their new stadium that's being built too. It's a big hole in the ground right now next door to the new stadium, but it's going to happen in another 3 years from now. Does your husband get to come down to games once in a while, or you just watches them on TV?
He just watches them on TV. We haven't been back up there to his home in New York since about 2016. We used to go regularly, but as the kids started aging, we have 4 kids. As the kids started aging, it became a lot harder to do that. It's about 848 miles from our door to the door he grew up at. So it's just a struggle, and traveling that long distance with all the kids and managing their schedules. So unfortunately, he does not get to go, but I would absolutely love to take him to that new stadium. I wasn't aware. I'm sure he is. I wasn't aware that there's a new stadium coming. So that would be awesome to be able to take him to that.
Yeah, 2026. Now, also, I don't know how much of a sports fan you are. We'll get back. We'll talk a little about sports for about a minute, and then we'll get back to your career and stuff. Are you a South Carolina Gamecock fan as well?
Yes. You can't be born and raised right here in Columbia without having some of that pumped into you. It's Gamecocks all the time. I live about 2 miles from Williams Brice Stadium. I actually have been everything to do with the Gamecocks is pretty much in my blood. I unfortunately did not go to USC. I do regret that, but I've done everything else USC wise. One of my side hustles, and out of everything I've ever done, one of my side hustles is working the Little Caesars Pizza Kitchen at Williams Brice Stadium. And I pair up with the owner, the manager of the franchise of Little Caesars Pizzas. There's 16 stores here in the Midlands, and the president of those 16 stores runs the pizza kitchen, and I help that family bake, slice, pack, and deliver all of those pizzas, up to about 1,000 pizzas per game, all throughout the stands. And it's me and my husband do that together, and my best friend does it with us, and it's it's one of the most stress-free jobs I've ever had. One of the funnest. It's extremely flexible, and we just do that as a very fun side hustle to be together and get outside of our daily work and daily job life.
What do you like? What should I'm going to rephrase this. What do you love the most about South Carolina?
Oh, I love the cost of living. Because I read all about the housing prices and the housing market up in various other cities, and I think Columbia is a really well done city for the most part. Really well done city. It's a good area. It's comfortable, and it's a livable price range. I mean, there's 6 people in our family, and we've often lived off of one income. And it's in most parts of the country that is just not doable. And I think being able to afford housing, afford food, afford a family here in South Carolina is pretty remarkable in 2023. I feel very blessed.
Yeah, because here in Canada, the real estate is just ridiculous, and Canada is one of the most expensive countries in the world to live in now, and it's getting harder and harder for the younger generation. Just like in some states too. I know in the Buffalo, New York State area, and even in Michigan and some of the border states, their prices have gone up as well.
Yeah,
All
and
right, go ahead.
sorry, there was a slight delay. Go ahead.
It happens. No, go ahead.
And so, yeah, I think about that with the kids, with, of course, 4 kids. My kids are ages 9 up to 15. My little one's she's about to turn 9 on Saturday, but 9 to 15. And I constantly worry about the trajectory of the housing market. And will they even be able to afford even here, where I've always considered a really good cost of living area, will they be able to handle it? Will they be able to have the same benefits that even I had, being able to buy into the housing market when I was early 20s? And I worry about that constantly.
Absolutely. And one thing about I've never had kids, but I've been an uncle, and I've done volunteer work with Big Brothers, by the way. Volunteer work has been a huge part of my life as well. And kids grow up quick, and it doesn't take long before they're finished high school, and then they're in college and university as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I still see my 15-year-old, who's now 6'1". I still see him as my tiny little baby.
Wow. That leads to my next question I wanted to ask you, Lisa. Where did you attend school? And did you have a mentor or mentors when you were in school or after school? And have you always, I was going to say, you've always had an interest in nonprofits and helping out your community?
Yes. So not my love of nonprofits started back when I was 14. I worked for 4 years at an educational nonprofit serving small children. And the time that I spent there, the feelings that I got, it shaped me. And then I transitioned from there into working at a nonprofit called CSD, Communication Service for the Deaf. I spent 4 or 5 years there. I started out on the call center floor and shifted into management. And what CSD did, or does still, is they bridge that gap for the deaf and hard of hearing community. Where the culture there, it was my first job that I truly, truly loved. I worked there from like age 20 to 25. I still keep in touch with many of those people there, the people that I was on the management team with. The very first person I would consider a true mentor, her name is Julie Robinson. I actually named my daughter Julie, like in her honor. Julie Robinson taught me so much about being a female and being in upper management. She was the center director of our call center. And I had a lot of growing up to do during that time. I was the youngest on the management team by at least 8 or 9 years. People I was serving and overseeing were all older than me. And I was very much kind of black and white thinker back then. Like, you have to do it by the rules. You have to do it like this, which did not garner me any favors in people's eyes. One thing I was responsible for was scheduling. predicting trend lines, predicting call volume, making sure that we had the appropriate amount of people in the seats at the right time, working with HR to get people trained, just that management of human resources as they came in and staffed our phone lines. And so schedules changed about every 6 weeks, and I was the change agent for those schedules. I would it went by seniority, and I would have to plug in and fill seats, like 15 seats at 1 p.m., 17 seats at 1:15, and just plug and play all throughout the 24-hour cycle that we had calls coming in. And people would come to me upset about their schedule every single time, and they would say, I can't come in at 7:15. I have to get my children to work. And a 20-year-old me, I'm like, I'm sorry, that's the rules. There was no play. And Julie really took me under her wing and taught me how to navigate the emotional complexity of working in management, how to look at a situation and see the empathetic side of it, and understand that very fine line of, okay, this right here matters. This is where we can kind of shift away from complying into more of a realistic boundary. And I very much appreciate the impact she had on my life. I still keep in touch with her. I still actually keep in touch with her boss, Jim Shevlin, through LinkedIn, Facebook. I consider all of those people, and it's been 16 years since that call center shut down and the CSD pulled out of the state. And so I found out in life it's not that usual for someone to keep in touch with the amount of people, the sheer amount of people that I keep in touch with there. And it speaks so much to the culture. And I just stuck with nonprofits after that. I've dipped my toes a couple of times into being hired elsewhere in a corporate type of environment. And every single time I revert back and it's like, no, that is not for me. It feels kind of cold and soulless. And it of course, it could be the places that I choose to try, but the nonprofit world is it's more my speed.
And by the way, volunteering has been a big part of my life. I was a Big Brother volunteer for 16 years, volunteer with the Humane Society for another 10 years, and this summer I volunteered at a youth basketball camp as well. So I always find it's important to give back. And
That's awesome.
I've done a lot of fundraising for nonprofit organizations as well. And I just found my new career at the age of 47. I'm a late bloomer, and I'm 51. And I'll be honest, I don't miss being in my old corporate job. I was in corporate security, and you know what? It was good for the 2 decades, but I was ready to move on. And this is something I love doing. And my goal is to get into radio, but I'm also starting up my own business too. And it's a lot of work, but you have to have a passion for it. And it's something I have a passion for.
Mhm.
And I love storytelling and learning stuff from my guests all the time. And especially someone like you coming on here today.
Well, great. I think you're doing a great job. I really enjoyed our LinkedIn exchanges. You have a really good branding presence. And I was excited when you had invited me to be on. I felt honored.
Well, thank you so much. And I've reached out to people. Like when I first started this, couldn't get anyone on, but I just kept working at it. And it's like anything. If you have a passion and you're willing to learn and improve, eventually I got guests come on. And my show's not just a Canadian show, it's international. And this technology is amazing as well. And it got me through the pandemic too. Those 2 years I'd like to forget about as well.
Oh, I'd like to forget about him too. Yes.
As definitely. All right, we're going to get to the next question, Lisa. Can you just tell us about your new company you founded, I believe in May of 2023, called Stratezy Navigator? Did I get the name right or wrong?
So I know that's a little hard. It's Stratezy, and it's a mashup of strategy and easy. And the navigator is just referencing the theme of a compass. So in my experience with nonprofits and working in every single level, volunteer, staff, committees, management level, executive directing, and 5 different boards of directors, I've had a very holistic view of how nonprofits are structured. And I've encountered so many different nonprofits, and And when you encounter things repeatedly, a theme starts to emerge. And what emerged for me over time was that there's a lot of resources for teaching someone how to lead. There's a lot of leadership resource, John Maxwell, Simon Sinek, all of those people. There's a lot of resources for boardmanship, how to govern. You got Joan Gary, all of the different nonprofit resources teaching you how to be one thing or another. But what there isn't a lot of is teaching someone how to take vision and turn it into an actionable item. And there's a gap there. There's a gap in the industry that teaches boards and CEOs, executive directors, how to work together to bring their vision to life. So when you have nonprofits, you have the board of directors, you have the management. Each one of them have their own realm that they're responsible for. And they each have their own purview, and you're not supposed to cross. Like a board of directors is not supposed to tell a CEO or a director, hey, you need to hire this person or you should fire that. That's overstepping boundaries. A CEO, he doesn't have the purview to take and change the core identity, which is a big picture vision of who the nonprofit is. Like, let's say you have a nonprofit that serves, that teaches people Spanish. I'm just pulling something random out. Let's say you have a nonprofit and their mission is to teach people Spanish. The CEO does not have the purview to all of a sudden say, oh, we're going to start teaching ASL. He doesn't have the purview to do that. That's the board's realm. That's the visionary aspect of it. So you have your visionary aspect, your aspirations, who you want to be, the steering of that ship, navigating. And then you have your operations, which is the doers. You have your dreamers, your doers, your CEO managers are the doers. They're the ones who implement the vision. So you have your aspirations, operations. But how do you get there? How do you get from aspiration to operation? How do you get those to form one tight ball of strategy and carry that out over time? And in my experience, it's I've seen all of the different levels, and I've created a theoretical methodological framework. It's called the Wheel of Focus. And what this wheel does is it breaks down into very easy language what boards are responsible for in the Northern Hemisphere, if you're looking at a compass, what CEO and managers are responsible for in the Southern Hemisphere, and how it's all interconnected. And I actually have a book that I've written that explains this concept in both a creative storytelling way and in a very fact-based advice kind of way. And it's things I've just seen happen repeatedly over and over in my 25 years of experience in working with all manner of nonprofits, high caliber nonprofits, really efficient, effective decision makers. And they all have just certain things they gravitate towards. And that's how it ended up with the three focuses of a board. If you're looking on a compass, you have your north, your south, your other directionals, east, west. So your compass, your boards are focused on leadership. Who do they hire? Who do they hire to run a nonprofit? And that's the leadership aspect. But once that leader is hired, he then worries, he's the CEO, he then focuses on the talent, which is straight below, directionally below leadership. So you got talent and leadership. And then the board's also responsible for the big picture of space, which is your facility usage, your how you occupy the realm in which you exist. And the board's also responsible for the big picture funding, whereas your management, they're responsible for the practical application of your outreach, your talent, and your programs. Now, both of those sides, your boards, if you're sitting in a Northern Hemisphere looking at a compass, your boards up top, your CEOs in the Southern Hemisphere. If you come to that Eastern and Western horizon, you'll find your guidelines and your culture. Both teams, you have to work together to have a healthy culture and to have strong guidelines. Your culture are your behaviors and your beliefs. And your guidelines are your policies and your procedures, which are nothing more than your encoded behaviors and beliefs. So directionally, bilaterally, those two flow together, and both teams have to work really strategically on those. And so what this wheel does, what my book does, is it teaches people how to plug and play and take things from the aspirational, okay, we need good space, but how do we operationalize that? And it just shows different pathways and steps and a framework on how to make that work. And that whole idea, that book and Strategy Navigator, takes those concepts and makes it easy for boards and CEOs to figure out, okay, how do we make this visionary aspect of what we want to do in the world? How do we operationalize that and turn it into everyday tactical methods that will drive our mission forward? And so I have the book, and then with the consulting side of it, what I do is I offer very inexpensive comparatively compared to most consultants packages, upfront pricing. It tells exactly what you're getting. There's very specific things that nonprofits in our area can reach out for, choosing the package. Like, let's say they want help identity crafting. I already know from experience how many hours of consulting that will take. So they know how many hours up front they would get. There's another package that offers goal setting. I know how many hours it typically takes to come up with a focus group with discussions to wrap around about 6 or 7 solid goals. So I offer that. And it's based on, I started it, like you mentioned, in May, and I've already had my first client. I worked with a nonprofit over the summer to transform their systems and bring their board together and align with their management and recraft their vision, their mission, their values. Took them through a 4-hour board retreat and all of that good, hard discussion through that. Really enjoyed that process. And that was the first very focused package that I've done with Stratezy. But it all plays back to stuff I've been doing routinely over the years, just free, pretty much. I often have people contact me and say, hey, and they'll ask a certain piece of advice to do with nonprofits, or they'll ask for help doing something else, or because I am very goodwill centered and nonprofit-y, I'm like, of course I'll help you. Of course I'll help you get this up and running. And I've done that so many times over the years. I've had comments like, well, when are you going to turn this into a business, Lisa? Because everyone knows I'm kind of crazy like that and always entrepreneurial and looking for the something cool to do and a project to take on. And this summer was it. It's when I finally stepped into that realm of having an official branded type of experience that's reflectant of exactly what I've been doing in my past, only it's now well packaged. People don't have to come seek me out and bring random things to me. They know what they're getting up front.
Okay, and I was going to ask you this question. What were some of your challenges of starting up your own company, obviously nonprofit, and do you have a website up and running yet for your new business?
Oh, yes. As a web developer, I am I toss up websites really quickly. I love WordPress. I use premium WordPress themes. I have it down to formulaic. I know where to plug and play everything. I have my favorite plugins. I do have Stratezy Navigator up and running. It's been up for a while now. However, I took it down last night because I'm revamping some of the pages to align more with my upcoming book. So if anyone goes to it between tonight and tomorrow, it will show that it's down for maintenance coming soon, but it will be back up live over the weekend when I retrigger that. Some of the challenges of starting my own company, gosh, I've run into many challenges over the years. Each time I've tried to start a company, I've always learned something new from it. And I mean, back in the day, when I started that paper airplane business, I mean, when I was 4 years old, the first thing I ever remember learning from business is that, A, you need someone passionate alongside of you, or your will to succeed will die with it. And B, you actually need something that sells. You need something that people want. There was not really that many people who wanted paper airplanes, especially ones that had staples in them, meaning the airplane couldn't fly that far. But I thought as a 4-year-old that, hey, if I put a staple in it, it won't unfurl. And I didn't want my product that I was making to come undone, because that would make me look bad as a product maker. And then let's see, I started a grocery solutions business back when I was in my mid-20s, somewhere along in there. I tried I had one called Grocery Solutions. And what that was is that people would order online. They would order, I had a website, everything. They would order groceries to be delivered to a local person on whoever they wanted. I remember one specific order that I got in. Someone was out of state, and their I think it was their cousin had just had a baby, and they wanted to deliver some groceries to them. And this was circa 2006, 2007. And so if you remember back in there wasn't a lot of technology to make really fast interaction happen. And I knew at that time that grocery delivery was going to be a thing. I knew it was going to be hot. I knew that it was I needed to jump into that market. But when I did, and I worked it for about a year and a half, 2 years, and what I learned was that if you don't have proper systems in place to make things efficient and effective, then it will burn out your human resources. And it burned me out. I was like, this is ridiculous. Trying to just physically go shop myself, get in the order, to intake the order, go shop, make sure everything's done right, go to the person's house, deliver it, do everything, every single part of the line that I'm working with. So that was a big lesson I learned in that. And I mean, fast forward 15 years, we now have Walmart who has the systems in place, and Instacart, and I'm not sure what they have in Canada, but we have, I mean, grocery delivery effective down here in South Carolina. 2019 was when grocery delivery kind of exploded on the scene, and it works, but it took the growth of technology intermingled with organizations that had the resources to implement that technology in those systems to make it function smoothly. Another challenge I face, I opened a publishing company back in, not a nonprofit, but an indie publishing company, or a for-profit company back in 2018, Vestra Lingua. And we were publishing books. We ended up publishing 12 books for various local authors. And they were very well, nicely done books. But because my focus was on children's books instead of novels or fiction or whatever, it's focused on children's books. Children's books had a cost additive to it for upfront that cost an outrageous amount of money to create the product, because you had to pay your illustrator. You didn't just pay a layout designer or someone to put the book together. It wasn't just words on a page. You had to have illustrations, really nicely done illustrations, and bottom rate illustrations for a normal children's book. It's difficult and almost impossible to find for less than $2,000 if you want something really well, nicely done. So the startup cost in that, I learned, was just so exorbitant that whatever I did in business, you had to be sure that you have all of the resources in place, and that your startup costs do not outpace your income that you receive from it. And that was one of the big lessons I learned from the publishing company. And of course, I started in 2018, and we really hit the ground running at the end of 2019. And I was like, yes, 2020 is going to be my year. And I was going to go into book events and big conferences. And I had a face-to-face model built out of sales and interacting with the public. And 2020 happened. And so that was a big lesson. And as far as the nonprofit space, when when I took over in the role of executive director, one thing I learned from the nonprofit space and managing a nonprofit is all of the little tiny details you don't think about when you run a for-profit company. Like here in South Carolina, you have to register as a charity, and you have to update that every single year. That had escaped my attention somehow along the way. I didn't realize it until after I had acquired this role, and it came to my attention that, oh, we're about to lose our 501c3 because we have not submitted our renewal to the state to still be a charity. And I was like, we have to do that. Let's do that now. Let's check that box and get that done. That was an eye-opening experience. And I think out of everything I've learned, the biggest challenge for me personally is when I bump up like the 501c3 thing and registering with the state, is when I bump into something that I just didn't know. It's something that comes right out of the blue from left field, and it knocks you on the side of the head like you've been hit with a baseball, and you're other like, where in the world did that hit come from? And I've experienced a couple of those throughout trying to start up companies. I had no idea I was even supposed to be checking that box or doing that, because they didn't teach me that. I have an MBA, and like they didn't teach me that in Business 101, or they didn't teach me that in the 3 managerial accounting classes that they had me do. So yeah, it's the stuff that you don't know is what always gets you the most.
And one thing too, in my situation, and it goes for a lot of people that are starting a new career or even a business, is your mindset. You're going to get a lot of people that support you, but you're also going to get your skeptics and non-sayers and non-believers, and also rejections too. Sometimes you're going to get rejections. I personally use them as motivation and to keep fueling me to prove these people wrong as well. I try to turn a negative into a positive as well.
Oh yeah. Oh, I do that too. I have thoughts of people in my background who have fed me some very negative critiques, people that I had once trusted. And I think we all experience that in life, where we're moving along and we get a piece of feedback that doesn't align with either the truth, or it does align with the truth, and it's whatever was said was just so deeply as a part of who we are that we know innately that I'm probably not going to get over that issue. So either I'm going to have to be effective in getting over it, or I'm going to have to accept that quality about myself and accept the fact that there's going to be other people that notice this and comment on it. And speaking of, so you had mentioned earlier that I'm an author. My 4th book's about to come out.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm on Goodreads. And so if you're familiar with Goodreads, Goodreads is a social media site for book lovers. And it has a lot of book reviews and authors on there. And it's where you want your book to be. So it gets ratings and it gets talked about and shared. And so when my first book came out, it was a children's book. It was no more than about 1,000 words. It was picked up by a Canadian book blogger, one of the most popular, I think the second most popular Canadian book blogger out there. And I was super excited when I realized that a review was coming out from that. But she dropped a 2-star review on Goodreads, and her review, and I kid you not, her review was longer than my book. And wow. I read through that, and she just sliced and diced it apart. And you can't, sometimes feedback is truth. Sometimes feedback is not. But then there's that subjective area in the middle where sorry, my pups are in here in the room with me.
That's okay. I love dogs.
I've got 3. That's my beagle. She's barking out the window. She sees someone walking down the road.
Oh, I love beagles.
I've got my beagle's named Betty White.
Okay.
Betty, come on, Betty. And so I've lost my train of thought thinking about my beagle. Oh yeah, the review. Oh gosh, yes, the review. So there's that area where, okay, well, you pick apart a review, and you have to be thick. You have to be thick-skinned anytime you're in business or anytime you're in writing, because your core circle people, they're not going to tell you like it is. They're going to support you, and you need that. You need that core circle of people say yes and cheering you on. But then when you branch outside of your circle, that's when about 50%. Anywhere between 25 to 50% of everyone you meet outside of that, they're probably not going to find you all that appealing, because you're just a stranger and they're assessing you based on their perspective. So her review, I picked out the parts where I was like, okay, she's kind of right on this. She's kind of on point, but I couldn't have changed it. Because there were reasons I had written something a certain way or presented something a certain way. I had logical thoughts built around it. I'm like, well, she's right on there. That's fair. Then the reports were like, no, she's not right on this. How did she even perceive it like this? But then there was that gray area, and the gray area where you can't fight it. You can't say anything about it because it's their opinion. That's what kind of is more difficult to navigate when you're first starting to learn to navigate harsh critics. And so anyway, yeah, it's always, I tell my kids all the time about that. And sometimes you just get bad reviews. Sometimes your reviews are longer than the actual effort you put into whatever is being reviewed. And you have to live with it and deal in. And people who are onlooking, people expect to see bad reviews. So in my opinion, whenever I do something and let's say there's 5 stars, I mean, anytime I've ever put out a book, I'm like, okay, if I get, let's aim for a 3.9 to a 4.3. If I can get into that area, my first book, it had a 4.2 rating on it on Goodreads. I'm like, if I can get into that area, then I will feel good. Because as long as there's some bad, some good, some in the middle, then people are going to view you as authentic. What you don't want in business is to just have that straight 5-star reviews where everyone's like, yeah, this is perfect. Because then you start questioning. You're like, okay, did all their friends write this? Did they send out a blast and say, I'll pay you $100 if you put this on there? And so you have to be willing to accept the critics. You just have to. And you have to learn how to navigate that and cry into your pillow at night and then move on.
The only way you get better in any career, not just media, but in your career or anyone else's career, is to take that feedback, even if it's, I shouldn't say negative, but constructive, and use it to improve. That's the only way you get better.
Yes, and it's fair to call some feedback negative. That's very fair because some of it is just cruel and mean, and the internet can be mean. And when you open yourself up with visibility, whether it's in any form of media, whether you are on a podcast or whether you are writing a book or whether you are out there performing or entertaining, you are exposing vulnerability to yourself, and it's going to happen. People are just going to be knocked down cruel at times. The negative feedback. Oh,
we'll wrap it up in a couple of minutes, but how satisfying was it? How satisfying is it to see your book published? And what inspired you to write your 4th book? And what was the time frame like for your 4th book? Like, how long did the process take?
Oh gosh. So the process for writing this book, I started with the concept back in 2018. I started formulating the thought process around the concept. And I worked really hard, just dropping notes, creating some structure around, okay, well, this is where the direction it needs to go. And I had all of that built up all along, plotting through. I had went through graduate school, and I honed it even more when I went through. I got my master's of business administration. I picked and pulled concepts from there. And just jotted down the notes and had this big buildup of notes. And alongside that, I also had a buildup of experience. I'm a journaler. I am a writer at heart. I write everything. I have a very high output. And I do that to practice my output and to get better at writing, because the more you practice things, the more you figure out how you can say things in very different ways. And so I had this buildup concurrently of both ideas and concepts that are very abstract. And then I had a buildup of journals of experience in my past. And so this past summer, spring, summer, I started looking at that, and as I shifted into a consulting mode with a nonprofit down here that I started working with in Colombia, in a consulting basis, and I started formulating a story in my head. I'm like, how can I present this to someone to make it easy to understand and enjoyable? Because nobody, even me, as nerdy as I am, nobody out there picks up a book about framework and methodology and say, oh, this sounds like very light bedtime reading. That's not fun. What I prefer personally, I love audiobooks. I love absorbing content, and story form content is my favorite. So I'm like, well, I have this buildup of experiences in me where I have noticed the different things, the different elements that high caliber leaders do. And I have seen the same constructive pieces in all the different high caliber nonprofits that I work with. Concurrently, I've also seen the bad side. I've seen the sadness. I've seen the frustration, the tiredness, the pitfalls, the incidents, the when people walk away, when people get upset. I've seen that emotional turmoil. So it struck me that I could tell the story of the framework by using a very specific fictional nonprofit. And so I took this nonprofit, a fictional nonprofit. I made up the entire world about the nonprofit and just inserted elements of my own experiences, my own observations, and turned it into story form and a cast of characters with all the different personality traits and personas that I've encountered along the way. And it tells the story of the Horizons of Hope Foundation. It starts out with the book starts out with their implosion. They had gotten to a critical area. They had been open for 16 years, gotten to a critical area of mismanagement. They imploded, and they had a leadership changeover. And that leadership changeover, the new CEO that got brought in, he was able to effectively reestablish that nonprofit through various techniques, following the framework from the Wheel of Focus. And it's just the story in it makes you enjoy the characters. And once the idea struck that this is how I'm going to position it, the writing came really fast, because then it was nothing more than pulling and piecing together and turning the elements that I've collected over 5 years into story form. So it was more of a big editing process. I'm like, I have this incident right here in my past that was very important to the trajectory of XYZ nonprofit, whatever nonprofit I had been situated with or working with or volunteering with at that moment. This was an element that was very important. Let's craft that as part of this narrative. And so the narratives are just woven all throughout. And that came really quickly. It's just over the past 2 months, I would say that I was able to fill in the blanks and get it to a point where the manuscript was done. And now it's in final editing rounds. Everything's getting polished. I've got the ISBN number, the plan out, the design, the covers designed, everything's laid out. And it's just got to have those final, like you're dusting away. After you finish building a house, you get your broom and you sweep and dust. So that's what stage it's in right now.
Where can people purchase this book online, and for people that are watching this from Canada or in the Toronto area?
So it will be available December 1st on our website, Stratezy Navigator. And it will also be available on 39,000 different retail outlets throughout the world. I use Ingram as my distribution, and they push it out to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, Walmart.com, Target.com. Anywhere you can think to find a book, it will be available.
Okay, I will have to look for your book in December as well. I'd like to support you, and it's great talking to you. Do you have time for 2 more quick questions, Lisa?
Yeah, certainly.
Okay, just with all my guests too at the end of the show, what's a fun fact about yourself that most people don't know about you?
Fun fact would there's a lot of funny ones I could pull out, but one that I think is personally fun is that I am a super geek that loved Saved by the Bell back in the day. I'm not sure if Saved by the Bell made its way up to Canada, but it was a super popular
Yes,
show
it did.
here in the
Yes.
1990s.
Yes.
I love Saved by the Bell, and some of my earlier writings were like fan fiction with Zach and Kelly, and so in 2000 and 2001, in that era, the local TV station, the local NBC TV station, it's called WIS TV down here in Columbia. They used to host back to school bashes, and it wasn't WIS. Oh, I'm wrong. Man, this was 20 years ago. Was it ABC? Might have been ABC. Anyway, that's irrelevant. And so at this back to school bash, Richard Jackson, who was on Saved by the Bell, the new class, he came. I got to meet him live and in person and shake his hand, although I wasn't as big a fan of the new class as I was Saved by the Bell. But then the next year, they brought Screech here. And so I got to meet Dustin Diamond, talk to him, shake his hand. This was, of course, before his rogue days where he went kind of off the handle, and God bless him. But I enjoyed meeting, and he was very pleasant in person, and I consider that a really nice little moment from my teen years.
Yeah, I grew up with that show here in Canada as well. It's not just an American show; it's international. It's really loved internationally, and even to this day, I think they're still having the original Saved by the Bell reunion shows going around in the States too, as well. At Comic-Cons.
Yeah, and they just had like a Saved by the Bell. It's on Peacock, and I forget which what it's called, but I forget what the new name for it is, but it's where Zach is now the governor of California, and then Jesse and Slater were married, and it's about all of the teens, all of their kids growing up and going to like Bayside, and I think it was just canceled this past season. It maybe made it 2 seasons. Don't quote me on any of that. I watched a few shows of it. It didn't have the magic appeal of the original, but it was fun seeing the characters just back together and seeing how they've changed and how they've not changed. It was funny that Zach hasn't really changed very much, and they kept him fairly true to the original persona that they had.
Well, one thing too, I grew up in the 70s, by the way, and I thought the 70s and the 80s and even the 90s were great for television. And sometimes you can get lucky with a reboot, but it's not always the same as the original. I always find the original is always the best. Like with Magnum PI, the original one is much better than the current one. And it's just sometimes you can't recapture the magic of the past.
Yeah, and speaking of Magnum PI, so that reminded me that my husband is currently binging through Hawaii Five-0. And so he's watching the new one, and I didn't watch the new one because the old one was the best. Of course, I have loyalty to the older shows, but he's been binging, and I hadn't been watching with him. I'd been kind of like just
absolutely
sitting, and it's great. I started getting drawn in, and now I'm kind of suckered into it, and I'll sit there with him at night watching, and it's. I'm a big SVU fan, and I just told him last night, holy cow, the beginnings of these are even more heart pounding than SVU, and it's funny. But it's that since you mentioned the reboots, Hawaii Five-0 is a reboot. It's been
successful. That one has been successful. I'm just wondering if this Frasier reboot's going to work. I think Frasier reboot's going to be on Netflix.
Yeah, so I'd heard about that. My husband mentioned that. Oh, there goes my dog. My husband mentioned Frasier reboot yesterday.
Yeah, so cross your fingers on that. But anyways, hey, make sure you spoil your dogs. And I love beagles. I have a beagle group on Facebook with like 10,000 followers on my beagle group.
Ooh, so yes. Oh, that's awesome! You should have mentioned that. And we could have when I was talking about the dog groups. That's really cool. We could have nerded out about that.
Definitely, and I'm gonna wrap this up, Lisa. But where can my audience best follow you on social media, and what's the best way of contacting you?
All right. So the best best way of contacting me, no matter what company you're thinking someone might think I'm with, is I have a personal email, info at Lisa, Lisa B Cole, COLE.com. So info at lisabcole.com. That's also my website, lisabcole.com. It is just like my web resume, and it's linked to all of my different social medias. I'm currently on a fall Facebook break. I am the most active on Facebook. I have about 12,000 followers over on Facebook, but I do have my Facebook deactivated while I'm on my annual September Facebook break. So no one would be able to currently find me on there. And let's see, LinkedIn, of course, Lisa Cole. I have the MBA at the end of my name on there in the Columbia, South Carolina area. And I love new connections. I love chatting, getting to know people, finding about people's life stories. So I'm always open to connecting.
Absolutely. Hey, and Lisa, I apologize I kept you more than 40 minutes, but I really enjoyed having you come on my show today. This is my 319th episode, and
Oh,
if
that's
you can give me a
awesome.
little bit.
Congrats.
Thank you. I'm and when this show airs, my show is done remotely from home and goes to a station in Georgia. So when it airs on a radio station, I will send you the link to the radio station, and I will send you the link to my YouTube channel and to Apple Podcasts as well for this episode. But it's been a pleasure getting to know you and talking to you today and learning about your business and nonprofits as well.
Wonderful. And thank you for having me on. Well, really quick question for you. I'm used to being the one to ask the questions. What is your favorite show from the 70s?
TV shows. I was born in 72. So I guess being born in 72, growing up, I would say MASH, the TV show MASH, Different Strokes, Good Times, Chips, the California Police. They tried to reboot it into a movie, but it didn't pan out.
Didn't
So
work
I
very
would say Chips. I would say Chips and Different Strokes and Ash, and like I said, I for music, I love 70s music and 80s music, classic rock from the
Oh, 80s are
70s and
awesome.
80s.
Yes.
Definitely. And
Are you
I'll
a
tell
Star
you.
Wars fan?
Sorry, go ahead.
Are you a Star
Pardon
Wars
me?
fan? You would have been right around in that time when
Yes.
the Star Wars came out.
Yeah, it came out May 5th, 77 when I was in kindergarten. So I'll be honest, the original 3 Star Wars, I love the original 3. The newer ones, not so much. I just don't think the newer ones are as good as the original ones that George Lucas did in the late 70s and early 80s.
So you're an originalist. So I probably shouldn't
Yes.
tell you that I actually did like Jar Jar Binks.
Okay. All right. But no, like I said, I'm definitely a Star Wars fan, and like I said, I'm kind of glad I grew up in the era I did, because back to it, like, don't get me wrong, I love the technology we have today, but back in the 70s and 80s, got to play street hockey with my friends, baseball, basketball. We had to be sociable, and it was a different time, different era, but it was
Very
a fun
different.
time as well. And yeah, but I always tell young kids, don't be in a hurry to grow up, because time goes fast. Just enjoy, take one day at a time. And that's what my attitude is now with my new career changes, one day at a time approach.
Yes, that's how I take life too. Just one day at a time. We can't take more than one day at a time. Life is hard.
Absolutely. And if I ever get down to South Carolina, I will let you know, because I'd love to catch I'm a Michigan Wolverines fan. And so don't boo me. I'm a Big Ten fan with Michigan Wolverines. I've been to a game at the Big House. It's insane. I would like to come down to a Gamecocks game
That
in
was
South
awesome.
Carolina just to experience.
It's really awesome. It's very enjoyable.
Well, I'll definitely let you know if I can ever get there to a game and stuff like that as well. So, but
Absolutely.
Lisa, I want to thank you so much for coming on live with CDP. They call it Sports Talk, but eventually I'm going to change. I'm going to rebrand my name at some point. But thank you so much for coming on episode 319 today. And we'll definitely keep in touch, and we'll definitely send you a copy of this episode later on tonight.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Lisa. Have a great evening, and make sure
You
you spoil your dogs, especially Betty White the Beagle.
Absolutely. Oh, and my Brindle Pit Klaus and my new blue tick coonhound Pepper. They're all rescues, and that's a whole other podcast though. So I love dogs. Oh, and there goes Betty saying
Adopt,
goodbye.
but my philosophy is adopt, don't shop. And a lot of my pets, cats and dogs, have been from rescue shelters, humane societies as well. Awesome.
Awesome.
I'm gonna let you go. Take care of Betty White, and talk to you soon.
All right. Bye, Chris.
Thanks, Lisa. All right, guys, that was Lisa Cole, my guest today from South Carolina, and those were her 3 dogs in the background, and one of them is named Betty White Beagle. And as you guys know, I love all dogs, but I'm especially love beagles, and I'm hoping when I do adopt another dog in the future, I will get a beagle again as well. And hopefully, you guys can check out my beagle group on my Facebook page. It's called the Beagle group on Facebook page, and there's also 10,000 people there as well. All right, guys, the next live is CDP Sports Talk will be Thursday, September 28th at 12 p.m. Eastern with my guest, Marissa Landcheck. She is a radio personality out of Boston on the Mix 104.1 FM in Boston, and she's also a voiceover artist or coach as well. So looking forward to that show this Thursday at 12 p.m. Before we wrap up this episode today, I was down in Buffalo last week, and I got to interview Buffalo Bison's pitcher and Toronto Blue Jays pitcher who is down in Buffalo for a rehab, Adam Simber. And here's my interview with Adam Simber from Saline Field in downtown Buffalo on Thursday. Pame here, radio host with W91 FM. Today I'm here at Saline Field in downtown Buffalo, where the Buffalo Bisons take on the Norfolk Tides, the Baltimore Orioles top farm team today. And I have a guest with me. In just 1 second, I'm going to bring him on. My guest, his name is Adam Simber. He's a relief pitcher with the Toronto Blue Jays, and he's just down here in Buffalo. Adam, just thoughts on coming down to Buffalo to do some rehab work.
It's awesome. I've been here a few times now over the course of the last few years. Always fun pitching here. The fans are great. Organization's awesome. Just having a lot of fun.
What's the one thing you like about this organization, the Toronto Blue Jays organization and the Buffalo Bisons organization?
Yeah, I've noticed since day one, since coming over with the Blue Jays, it's just the little things that they really look after the players, the attention to detail, with everything behind the scenes, on the field and off the field. Just an awesome organization, top to bottom. And same thing here in Buffalo. I mean, I got traded over from the Marlins in 21 here, and that was when the Blue Jays were playing here. And I showed up here in Buffalo in the ballpark. I mean, it felt like almost a big league atmosphere. It was a lot of fun joining up and getting to play here for about a month there in 21 and a couple times since then.
What are your thoughts on the 2023 Toronto Blue Jays season so far?
Man, they've been an exciting team to play with and to watch from afar as well. Getting hot at the right time. Hoping that they finish strong. Get hot, go through October hot.
Is there a number behind your number? Is there a story behind your number 90?
So that was the number I got in spring training, my first big league camp. And usually the higher the number, the quicker you're out of there. And I ended up making a team out of camp, and they asked if I wanted to change my number. And I said, no, I'm good with the grindy high number. Just kind of a reminder where I came from.
Do you remember your first major league appearance for the Blue Jays?
The Blue Jays, it was here against the Mariners. I think it was against the Mariners, 21. We wore red, I believe.
And what is your favorite major league ballpark to pitch in besides the Rogers Center and here, obviously?
I always like going back home to Seattle and pitching at Safeco. It's mobile now, but that was a ballpark I grew up going watching games at. So that's the one place that still makes me feel like a little kid when I go and play there.
And last question, Adam. The rehab, are you going to be back with the Blue Jays this season then?
Tough to say. It's not my decision. I'm just going to worry about trying to get healthy and pitch as well as I can here. And the guys up there are pitching great, so it'd be great to join them. But at this point in time, man, they're rolling, and I'm just happy to be a part of the organization right now.
And last question, what's a fun fact about you that people don't know about?
Fun fact, play guitar, big music fan. I like old stuff, 60s and 70s. Yeah, I'd say music's a big part of my life that I enjoy playing and listening.
Favorite walk-in song when you're coming in out of the bullpen?
The last few years I've had All Things by Chris Allen. It's kind of like a Christian house music. It's interesting fusion.
All right, well, Adam, I want to say thank you so much. Continued success in your career and your rehab, and thank you so much for doing this.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Good luck tonight. Okay, guys, that was Adam Simber of the Toronto Blue Jays, a reliever with the Blue Jays. He was down in Buffalo to do some rehab work for the Buffalo Bisons. And I want to say thank you to the Buffalo Bisons organization, the top farm team of the Blue Jays, for their giving me a full media pass this year, especially Pat Malacaro. And I love being down at the ballpark. Everybody there treats me like a part of the team. And I love talking to players and the coaches. And to me, I love being at a hockey arena, football stadium, and baseball stadium as well. We're going to wrap this show up, guys, but I want to say thank you to everyone watching this live stream today on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, or they call it X now, and Twitch, and also on my audio platforms as well. Live with CDP Sports Talk is a weekly sports and entertainment talk show hosted by yours truly, Chris Pame, is on weeknights from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern on radio station WQEE 99.1 FM, the home of Southern talk and sports, the heartbeat of Atlanta. Our radio station's website is wqeefm.radio12345.com as well. Also, guys, you can check out my website at beacons.ai/Chris D. Pame. All my media sites and all my digital content is on there. Again, beacons.ai/Chris D. Pame. Live with CDP Sports Talk, again, is sponsored by Barry Cullen Chevrolet Dealership here in Guelph, 905 Woodlawn Road West. 905 Woodlawn Road West in the Guelph Auto Mall. Check out barrycullen.com for the newest selection of new and pre-owned GM vehicles, or give them a call at 519-824-0210 or email them at info@barrycullen.com. Speaking of Barry Cullen Chevrolet here, gear up for fall at Barry Cullen Chevrolet with a 2023 Silverado 1500 custom crew pickup truck. You can lease for $297 bi-weekly at 6.9% financing with $3,250 down payment on an ultra low kilometer lease. Eligible Costco members can receive a $750 bonus. Again, more details about that at barrycullen.com as well. You can also follow me on TikTok at Live with CDP. I post a lot of content. So again, at Live with CDP on TikTok, and check out all my social media content there as well. StreamYard is the official live stream provider of Live with CDP Sports Talk. If you're into webinars or podcasting such as myself, check out StreamYard.com as well. Live with CDP Sports Talk, the audio version is available on these platforms: iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, Spotify for podcasters, Apple Podcasts, Breaker, Pocket Casts, Radio Public, Spotify, Castbox, LinkedIn, Pandora, and Tuned In, and weeknights again at 8 o'clock on WQEE 99.1 FM. Also, you can email me or text Live with CDP Sports Talk at cpame19@gmail.com, or you can text the show at 519-820-7188 if you have questions, comments, or suggestions and feedback would be greatly appreciated as well. And I want to shout out my friend Cameron Eden of the Buffalo Bisons, who was called up to the Toronto Blue Jays. He's now with the Blue Jays 40-man roster. And the Blue Jays take on the Yankees tonight, and it's an important week for the Blue Jays, who are trying to get into a wild card in Major League Baseball postseason. That Jays game tonight is at 7 o'clock. Last night, the Eagles won 25-11 over Tampa Bay. The Eagles are now 3-0 for the second straight year and the first time since the 1990s as well. We're going to wrap this up in 2 seconds, guys. The next Argo Bounce live audio show about the CFL's Toronto Argonauts 18-time Grey Cup champions will be Wednesday, September 27th, tomorrow night at 7 p.m. with my co-host Nick Small and myself. I'm going to have a special guest on Live with CDP Sports Talk. He's a Hall of Fame CFL player, and I'm excited to have him on. And I hope you guys can tune in tomorrow night at 7 o'clock on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, X or Twitter, they call it, and Twitch as well. But I want to say thank you again to my guest, Lisa Cole, for coming on here today. And just give me a little bit of time, guys, and I'll have this episode downloaded to my video platforms and all my audio platforms. But again, thank you to Lisa Cole for coming on here today. And thank you to everyone for watching live streamed and also on my audio platforms. And again, on WQEE 99.1 FM. I hope everybody has a great evening, and we'll see you tomorrow night for the Argo Bounce live audio show with myself and Nick as we talk about the Argos' 12-1 start to the season and their latest win over the Hamilton Tiger Cats, and preview their game against Winnipeg this Friday night at 8 o'clock from Winnipeg in a rematch of the Grey Cup. Again, thank you to Lisa Cole for coming on, and thank you everybody for watching and listening live with CDP Sports Talk. Have a good night, everybody.